nothing will get you jammed up more quickly than using a great technology where you haven't thought about all those other things like privacy, civil liberty issues up front. Data retention became a huge issue relative to license plate readers because there was mountains of license plate reader data just residing in various databases within states and or jurisdictions. And the question is, what happens to that data? And so then what happens is a legislature gets a hold of a problem and fixes the problem versus having a discussion about the use of the data. So I think we just need to be really thoughtful in how technologies get rolled out and the role that the IACP and policing can play in really thinking through what that functionality is, can be, or should be, and then framing it around a policy.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Vince Talucci, CEO of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Vince, welcome back to Associations Thrive.
It is so good to be back with you, Joanna. How are you?
I'm great. Vince, for the 5 people who didn't hear your first podcast interview, tell us about the IACP.
The International Association of Chiefs of Police. We've been around since 1893. We support just about ready to break 34,000 members in 175 countries around the globe.
Wow.
We're headquartered here in Alexandria with a dedicated, committed staff of about 140 members spread here and throughout the United States. We have a couple brick and mortar offices outside of Alexandria in Abu Dhabi as well as Seoul. We focus on all things policing. Our members are police leaders from around the globe and those that are supporting policing as well as broader criminal justice enterprises. We focus on all things policing, Joanna.
Vince, how's membership?
Membership's great. I just alluded to subtly, not so subtly. Our membership year concludes at the end of April 2024, and we're about to pierce 34,000 members for the first time. So this year will be our 12th consecutive year breaking membership records, having doubled our membership since the year 2016, I believe. So membership's been great, really, really strong growth.
Wow, congratulations, Vince. So it's 2024. Why am I becoming a member of the IACP?
I think it's for a couple things, Joanna. I think it's the advocacy weight that we represent the policing profession with. I think it's the development opportunities that we offer with our conference where you can participate with 16 to 17,000 of your peers. I think it's the education that we provide through our Women's Leadership Institute or leadership and policing organizations. I think it's the services that we provide. I think it's the Police Chief magazine that you get every month that goes out to about 40,000, a readership of about 40,000. I think it's the ongoing communication and standing representation that you get with the IACP. We've spent a lot of time making sure that we're listening to our members. This past year, we just concluded a 10-city listening tour where we go out and it doesn't matter if they're members or folks that aren't members. We just try to keep our finger on the pulse of the policing profession and then bring that back and put it back into the work so it's relevant and timely for those folks that need it most, and in our case, the policing profession.
Vince, tell us a little bit more about this listening tour. So who was on that tour and what did you learn?
So we do this every couple of years, and given the off years of COVID, it was time to get back out on the road. Typically, it's the president, the elected president of the IACP, and another elected member, and then senior staff, where we go out and we ask simply 2 questions in most cases. what is the most pressing issue confronting your agency and what is the most confronting issue confronting the profession. And often those answers are the same. Sometimes they're not. Things that we hear about are recruitment and retention is a pressing issue with the policing profession right now, officer safety and wellness, the ever growing list of things that police are responsible for relative to social ills. You'll hear about violence. You'll hear about legalization of marijuana, both cases where you'll hear real life situations of things that are being impacted, whether it's highway safety or roadway safety. Given that we have about 18,000 police agencies in the United States alone, you'll hear a lot of things that are touching communities. Community police engagement continues to be on the fore, making sure that community policing is not just a philosophy, but actions following that philosophy. I think there's a lot that we glean from those members, and I should say policing professionals in the audience that were there just to listen. And what happens is we have a legislative update that we do every 2 years that's informed by the field listening sessions. But we also do a report to say, this is what we heard. These are the regional differences that we may have located. So when we did it a couple of years ago, the issues in Florida were different than the issues in Seattle. And seeing that regional difference, but being able to understand those regional differences and not try to develop a one size fits all, but a broader template to say, hey, here's a framework of which you can fit in. If you need to go down path A, go down path A. If you need to go down path B, go down path B, but here's a resource for you.
So Vince, relative to the last time you did the listening tour, have the issues changed?
A bit. Officer safety and wellness is consistently an issue. Recruitment and retention is consistently an issue. Mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, again, the bucket of social ills that police are often called to address that may or may not be something that they're equipped to address all the time, but they're still that frontward facing, most present member of the government that is responsible for responding, are issues that are consistently brought through. And Joanna, that's looking back 5 years to listening sessions 5 years ago to the ones that were just completed in 2023. So there is some consistency there relative to community safety issues that are pressing in communities around the country.
All right. It is May 2024, and I'm so excited that you're here with me today because in this month, Matrix Group, my company, is celebrating 25 years in business. So that's super exciting. And in honor of that anniversary, I wanted to bring together association execs to talk about the future. So Vince, I know that you spend time thinking about this. What's law enforcement, what's policing going to look like in the next 5, 10, maybe even 25 years? Are you guys thinking about this, doing research?
We are. We have a timeless strategic plan that we constantly update and evaluate based upon the sort of where we are and where we're going. I think technology, artificial intelligence, you'll probably still hear some of those same themes from the listening sessions of 2020 to 2023 to 2033. Those same issues are going to be on the fore. We have built out a research component to better tell us what those issues are coming down the pike. Our scanning function for a while wasn't exactly where we wanted it to be. So really thinking about what the policing leader of tomorrow needs to have in their respective tool belts to best lead their agency, help safeguard a community. So I think for us, the community of the future will drive the policing force of the future. I think we'll continue to see community policing philosophy expanding, going right back to Sir Robert Peel's the police are the people and the people are the police. Having police agencies that look like their communities. I think we'll continue to see the evolution of policing that we've seen dramatically the last 25 years to 10 years to today. I think you're going to see an exponential change in policing, hopefully for the better, relative to that use of technology. Recruitment and retention is going to continue to be an issue for the policing profession for years to come. How do you continue to provide the same level, if not more services that are being demanded by the public in a better, more efficient and effective way, whether it's co-response models and thinking about different partnerships that you haven't partnered with previously, or maximizing that technology. So where do you use technology and AI as a helper to stay ahead of pressing trends that may be happening in your communities that aren't evident?
Well, let's dive into that. So how are technology and AI changing the policing profession, and what does it look like 25 years from now? Or what could it look like?
Yeah, so I think let me first upfront say about AI and technology, civil rights and privacy has to be at the fore of any conversation regarding any technologies that are happening.
Okay.
Because cameras are omnipresent now and how we use those. Cameras are not new to the policing profession, whether it was in-car camera early adoption or body-worn cameras. This is something the policing profession has used for a long time. The advent of cameras being omnipresent around, whether they're through homes and ring cameras or in corporations for security purposes, how to link that, but also, again, keep those civil rights and privacy considerations at the fore. I think we need solid policies, Joanna, on who can access what data when. And so from an operational standpoint, the technology is already there and the technology will continue to grow and develop. I can't tell you what the technology of 15 years is going to be from now, but I can tell you there's going to be policy issues and there's going to be privacy concerns to address. So what I think we try to do is wrap that framework around topics. And in this case, AI. AI is growing faster and expanding more quickly than any one person can absorb. And particularly when AI is one portion of a job that you have where you're responsible for the public safety. So I think as an organization for us, we need to spend a lot of time digging into what AI is, what it could be, the pitfalls, the pros, and providing that to our members in a meaningful way to have them and to help them make educated, informed decisions about what technologies to employ, how to employ them, what those policy considerations are, and maybe those things that we need to push back and say, hey, this might not be ready for prime time yet. Because far too often, and we've seen it in license plate reader technology that's omnipresent. License plate reader technology was introduced by the vendors who sell them to great usage. The problem was there was no data planned for it relative to how long do we keep the data? Where does the data get stored?
Oh.
So the technologies outpaced policy. So for us, from an IACP perspective, we don't know where the technologies are going to be, Joanna, per se, but we do know we need to stay in front of those technologies the best we can through solid, well thought out policies to include data retention policies.
So it sounds like even if you don't know what the technologies will be 25 years from now, you have a practice of scanning and identifying the technologies that will or could affect the profession and then providing guidance to your membership.
Absolutely, because nothing will get you jammed up more quickly than using a great technology where you haven't thought about all those other things like privacy, civil liberty issues up front. Data retention became a huge issue relative to license plate readers because there was mountains of license plate reader data just residing in various databases within states and or jurisdictions. And the question is, what happens to that data? And so then what happens is a legislature gets a hold of a problem and fixes the problem versus having a discussion about the use of the data. So I think we just need to be really thoughtful in how technologies get rolled out and the role that the IACP and policing can play in really thinking through what that functionality is, can be, or should be, and then framing it around a policy. So we try to make sure that we're staying as cutting edge as we can through our annual technology conference. Out of our 27 committees that we have, a good 4 or 5 of them focus on technology. I think we do a pretty good job of staying on top, but the ICU will never outpace technology. So we'll always be behind in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Vince, what is this doing to staffing at a local police department? Because there's probably already a lot of technology in a police station, and I've toured them, and there's a lot of tech. But if you've got this explosion of technology, including AI, including thinking about the policy issues around AI, are there new positions coming up in the police departments that don't exist today?
Yes. And I don't have any quantitative data in front of me to tell me this, but what I would think would happen, Joanna, is there'd be a shift from sworn members of the police force to a professional staff, so a civilian/professional staff position to manage those resources. Because you want to make sure that your well-trained, uniformed, sworn officers are out doing what they do best. So from a technology standpoint, there may be someone that's not sworn, maybe doesn't want to be sworn, that can still assist a police agency by maximizing the technology, building a data pool, figuring out how to integrate body-worn cameras, or building out a redaction program to help with those body-worn camera footage after the fact. You may have other folks that are more well versed in the abilities to do those things. Plus, you may want to keep your sworn resources, as difficult as they are to get now. Again, back to that recruitment and retention challenge. You want to keep them where they're going to be doing the most good. And typically that's out in communities, ensuring that they're doing their patrolling and investigation and prevention activities the best of their ability.
Wow. Well, let me dive into something that you said earlier, too, where you said in the future, the local police department needs to look like the communities that they're part of.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? Like, I'm thinking about Alexandria, that's very diverse, but housing is an issue. And unless you're making a lot of money, you're not living in Alexandria.
Right.
So how do we bridge that gap? And it can't be getting better.
No, and this is where a more system approach comes in place, Joanna. This is where the decision makers of Alexandria, per se, need to come and say, this is the priority. This is an issue, critical issue relative to staffing for Alexandria. Critical issue 1A, 1B is ensuring that the police force looks like the communities they're serving. So move to solutions. It comes down to housing prices. It comes down to making sure that the policies and practices of the police agency are meeting today's needs and meeting tomorrow's workforce needs versus a workforce of 10 to 15 years ago. And I'm not being specific to Alexandria, but broader policing. And then the decision makers coming up with a plan to say, okay, we're willing to put this much skin in the game to ensure that our agencies are willing to do that, because police departments aren't going to be able to solve this on their own. This is a broader legislative leadership governance issue for towns and jurisdictions. The challenge that you're having now, one way, is recruitment bonuses are being paid more and more to attract talent to your respective police agency. Now all that's happening is every police agency in a given area are popping up those bonuses. All you're doing is...
It's a bidding game.
Yeah, and you're fishing from the same pond. The key is going into ponds that haven't been tapped in yet, or how do you reach in and recruit from a pool that's not already in the profession? And I think that's a system-wide challenge that needs to be addressed with system-wide change. You need your decision makers in your towns, jurisdictions, states to come up with a holistic, comprehensive strategy about how to address it. Florida has done a really great job of building out a really attractive overall campaign to bring sworn law enforcement officers to Florida. You drive through Florida and there's billboards up about coming into the policing profession. And they've built a very friendly environment. Again, I'm not well versed in Florida legislation of what they've done. Anecdotally, we hear that the same recruitment retention issues that other places are having, Florida's not having it. So it's probably something that we need to look deeper into to understand what they've done, to see if there's a replication opportunity in there for other jurisdictions.
Well, Vince, let's look to the future like we're looking at 2050. Will we need the same number of sworn officers, or will we need more, or will we need fewer? Any idea?
I know we won't need fewer, Joanna.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking about, like, in some professions with AI, we might need fewer.
Yeah, I think we'll just need to shift the focus for present day policing. I think that technology component is going to be one. I think how we train will be different. And we see that today relative to learning styles, where we train becoming a much more mobile organization, mobile friendly organization. I think from a policing perspective, as long as there are bad things happening and crimes occurring, you're always going to need the police. Because when you dial 911 relative to someone who may be experiencing a mental health episode or a breaking and entering or a truancy activity that's happening, the police are the ones that show up.
Right.
And I don't see that changing anytime soon. There's probably different models of co-response that will help greatly, but that co-response will just shift. So you can shift the resources more appropriately where they should be, while leaving police to do what they do best, and that is to protect and serve communities. So if I were a betting person, Joanna, looking into my crystal ball, it's either the same amount, if not more.
I see. Okay. Well, how is this affecting and changing IACP? How are these trends really guiding what you're doing?
It's a great question. And again, for us, keeping our finger on the pulse of the policing profession and building out our membership beyond today's chiefs, but into tomorrow's chiefs. So our name, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, is a bit of a misnomer. Don't get me wrong, we take a lot of pride in the name and the culture of chief of police, but these roles are finite. And we can't rely on a chief of police once they come in, do a great job, and then retire. When we focus on just today's police chiefs, that's why our membership number would be where it was years ago. Because again, not being critical, but I think we're doing a better job today of focusing on tomorrow's leader in addition to today's leader. And so for us, that chiefs of police is not about present day only. Right? It's about ensuring that we're meeting the needs of tomorrow's leaders, that we're preparing them. Because quite frankly, chiefs of police today are stewards. They're stewards of their agency. They're stewards of safety for their communities. And they're stewards of folks coming in behind them that are going to be the next chief of police. So how do we do our share in prepping IACP to be an organization for today's leaders and tomorrow's leaders? We do that through advocacy, again, as we talked about, programming, education, development, finding opportunities for today's lieutenants and tomorrow's chiefs to be sitting at the table talking about important roadway safety topics. And so, again, providing that blend of different people and level enables everybody to see things a little bit different. And I think adding that perspective of various levels, various size agencies, various types of agencies, geographic locations. When you have a committee that's made up of 30 presidentially appointed people and you have folks at all ranks from across the world sharing their perspective, you break down a lot of mental models that may have come into the room sitting at that table. And I think that's good for today's leaders. I think it's good for tomorrow's leaders as well.
Vince, how are you changing your education offerings to meet the demands for the future?
We're fortunate that we've been focusing on a program called Leadership in Policing Organizations for many years. And the philosophy, the underlying philosophy, if I boil down this multi-week session to a word, it's the concept that everybody in the police organization is a leader. Everybody's a leader.
Love this.
Informal leaders, formal leadership. It's the same concept we're trying to build throughout the membership. Everybody's a leader. Everybody has a role to play at IACP. And we have plenty of volunteer opportunities where we can engage people, trying to bring them in, making sure that we're doing that. But our educational opportunities, we continue to evolve with technology. We're using more virtual-based, making sure that we're going through and using today's educational standards and technologies and approaches and models versus everything being in classroom all the time. There's still a value for in classroom. I absolutely believe that. In person for us is hugely important. Our annual conference, again, draws between 16 to 18,000 people per year. And it's an invaluable networking give and take exercise. The challenge that we have to get past is the challenge that everybody faced during COVID. While the opportunity to be virtual and remote is endless and freeing, it's also very transactional. So how do you have that technology as an enhancer of education, but not the sole component of it? We say it around here all the time. We're in the people business.
Absolutely.
And again, it doesn't matter if you work for the American X Association or the American Y Association. If you're a membership association, you're dealing with humans. And so everything that you do has to be based around how do you maximize that opportunity for the human or the person that you're dealing with at that point in time. So for us, thinking about what's best for training 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road is where we're building from, and not relying just solely on the curriculum and in-person training in the past, which is still valuable today.
Right.
But you need to make sure that you're providing ample opportunities for a broader audience that you can't necessarily do in a single classroom.
Vince, in the course of interviewing CEOs, I've heard from some of them who say, during the pandemic, we needed to make some quick decisions in order to stay alive, to serve our members, et cetera. Is your decision-making structure changing as a result of the pandemic, or because you're thinking about the future?
Well, I think the pandemic couldn't help but have an impact on how you think about things, period. That being said, I think the pandemic actually showed that we were pretty strong about making decisions before the pandemic.
Okay.
It reinforced our belief that we're doing the right things at the right time for the right reason. This is going to sound odd, but we were pretty well equipped to deal as an organization with the pandemic. I'm not minimizing the plight of the world from that terrible disease, but as an organization, we're pretty well equipped to deal with the stark change that befell us and every other organization overnight. We're overly communicative. We were on weekly all-staff conference calls twice a week, giving folks updates. But we started that process before that by testing our systems, even before they shut everything down. But it's just a snapshot, though, Joanna, because again, understanding that we're in the people business, not only for our members, but for our staff, try to be overly communicative, using technology as a tool, not having it be transactional, but being able to make a decision because you believe it to be the closest thing to right possible, separate from the technology of which you're using. So I think, if anything, we've honed our decision-making over time to be able to make quick, deliberate, yet thoughtful decisions about how to do what we need to do when we need to do it. I don't know what the recipe for that is, Joanna. I can't tell you, but when I talk to the board and looking back, and I'm not a big look back person, but it'll be 10 years in this role. I got a lot of things to be proud of and a lot of things that I would do differently. But my proudest moment still is how the staff of this organization handled COVID. And out of the universe of things you can be proud of, that's probably the biggest thing. And how well the board managed it with us, because there were a lot of changes. I think it was indelible, but I also think it was a reinforcement of how we made decisions to begin with.
Well, that's amazing considering the size of your board, too. You've got a 48-person board?
It's a pretty good sized board. But we maximize their time. Again, they're humans. They have day jobs. We try to make sure that we focus on the things that are most important that board members should be focused on. Governance, ensuring that we have a solid governance plan. That was hugely helpful because we did a lot of work pre-pandemic on governance. So we were able to make changes on the fly. As an organization that's been around since 1893, a lot of our governance was based on in-person meetings at our annual conference.
So everything happened at that conference, but you couldn't have a conference. So how do you make things happen?
Exactly. So we had a lot of change done in governance prior to the pandemic, which enabled us to have a board that was nimble enough to understand that we needed to make decisions quickly and decisively, yet deliberatively, for the good of this organization. And they did. And again, that's why I go back, proudest professional moment, sort of trying to help us navigate through this with a lot of really smart people.
Well, Vince, we've been talking about 25 years from now, but what's 2024 looking like for the IACP?
2024 is good. We were really fortunate. I don't want to make this all about COVID, but we lost 30% of our revenue in a 4-week stretch in March of 2020. Didn't have a single fiscally driven layoff. As a result, we were able to be nimble enough to move things around and move people around. And people were flexible enough to understand why we were doing what we were doing. But we had a roadmap to get back to where we were pre-pandemic and beyond. And we're there.
Nice.
We're there. We were actually there last year, but we're more there this year relative to being back to what we could or should have been in 2020. So from a solid footing perspective, our annual conference, again, big. But then we used to say we had 3 other conferences that were kind of small. And now our small is 1,100 people each, which isn't small.
Wow.
So all those meetings, I believe, if they haven't already, are going to set membership or attendance records this year. The membership, again, count is going to break 34,000 for the first time. But it's not just about the membership count. It's about what we do with it. But the other piece of that, if you dig into the membership number, it's our active membership that's growing as well. So it's not just members to get members. It's the active membership of the association. So membership's growing, fiscally solid. Advocacy weight is good. We're at the table for important policy discussions. We have a growing number of MOUs happening around the world. So we have standing with Interpol and Europol and Asianapol and a lot of the other important bodies around the world. So from a metric perspective, we're good. From a proxy variable for success, all those things, attendance, the value proposition that people are seeing in the IACP, we're in a good spot for 2024. And I couldn't be more pleased with where we are and more importantly, how we got there, though.
Wow, Vince, congratulations. It sounds like the pandemic was tough, as it was on everybody, but you guys really strengthened the organization and you are so well positioned for the future. Vince, I am so happy to have had you on the show again. I hope you'll come back again because every time I have you on, I learn something new and you share amazing stuff.
I'm glad to do this anytime. It's always good to see you. It's fun doing this, and I'm ready for part 3 whenever you are.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Bye!